This is our one and beautiful life. And that voice inside that's asking us to look a little deeper or to ask a few questions about how we're living that beautiful life and the longing that we have for greater meaning, purpose, alignment, sense of self. That voice is worth listening to.
Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention podcast. I'm your host, Kavita, and the founder of Power Purpose Play, a global community of women in midlife. I'm here to tell you that it's your time now to rediscover what has always been inside of you and bring that out into the world. If you're wondering what's next, but don't know quite what that is, or if you feel a twinge in your heart telling you that you have so much more to do and so much more to offer, you're in the right place. Ask yourself, if not now, when? Do you want to leave your job, start your own business, take control of your health, reignite the passion in your marriage, write that book, or at least that first chapter? Transitions like this can be daunting, but through listening to my story and interviews with incredible women every week, I hope to inspire you to take action. I rediscovered myself after the age of 50, and I know you can too. It's my time now to help you do just that. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. So today I'm so thrilled to have as a guest a woman whose whole life has been about helping other women lead their lives to their full potential. A self-described change maker, Belinda Clemmensen is the founder of the Women's Leadership Intensive and the proud co-founder of the Leader Coach Intensive program, whose mission is really to inspire, empower, support, and equip women to lead the change the world needs. As an ICF-certified coach and award-winning designer and facilitator of leadership development initiatives across North America for over 25 years, Belinda has now turned her focus to helping women lead in whatever domain or industry inspires them. I had the pleasure of being introduced to Belinda recently, and I was immediately drawn to her sincerity and her true belief in her vision. So I just had to have her share her wisdom with all of you today. So welcome to the podcast, Belinda. I'm so pleased to have you here.
Thank you, Kavita. It's great to be here. Thank you for including me in this podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm so excited to get into hearing all about your story. I was talking about your mission, but I wanted to hear a little bit about your story. How you developed, why you began the Women's Leadership Intensive, and I understand that you started you had a program in 2000 to 2004 called the Paddle to a Cure, which was an expedition and fundraising event. What was that initiative all about? And maybe you can tell us how that kind of led to you to, where you are today.
Absolutely. So I began my career sort of in the expedition guiding world. I started working for Outward Bound when I was in my 20s. Mm-hmm. And that's really where I cut my teeth as a facilitator, to be honest. There is no better environment for learning how to be present with people in the moment than being in the wilderness, because you can't control it. And so you facilitate what happens as it happens. It's great training. That being said, as a feminist, I started to struggle with what I saw as sort of gender dynamics and gendered approaches to expeditions at that time. I worked with a lot of men. Mm-hmm. Certainly the world of outdoor leadership is historically incredibly male dominated, right? All the mountaineers, all the sort of expeditions were men. Mm-hmm. And so the men that I was working with had a particular way of talking about outdoor leadership that was very individualistic, hero-based, so about the hero's journey, which didn't fit for me, and very much about the idea that men individually get to the top of some mountain, metaphorically or practically.
Yeah.
And then they tell the story of how they got there as a sort of a how-to for the rest of us. Mm-hmm. None of that was a good fit for me. Looking back, I don't think I would have called it a story of privilege, but I certainly can today, because privilege is something that we have much more language for now. Mm-hmm. But the idea that that individual was able to do that is actually, it's a myth, right? They had a support team.
Right.
They had resources. They had all kinds of community around them.
Yes.
And yet it was the individual story of leadership that kept getting told over and over again.
Yeah, because what about the people, the inclusivity of everybody else that has supported the climb up the mountain, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there was a huge values disconnect in that story that was being told about expeditions and leadership. And so I decided that what I wanted to do was start an expedition that was based on values of inclusion, accessibility, shared decision making, community, shared power structures, the idea that process is as important as outcome. And so I came together with some other women who also had some life experiences around breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So my mother's a 2-time breast cancer survivor, still with us to this day,
That's
thankfully.
amazing. Yes.
One of the other co-founders of that organization, her mom had recently passed from metastatic breast cancer. So when we were looking at, what do we want this to be for, right? As opposed to us just doing it for ourselves. Breast cancer research and education was an easy answer for us. And so the real learning from that for me was we were experimenting with organizational models and creating an organization that was really values based, really woman centric, feminist principles, essentially.
Right.
And it was amazing. I mean, we built an amazing community. We worked over 5 years on that project, raised almost $1 million for breast cancer.
Wow, that's amazing.
And it was. And we took hundreds of people into the wilderness for inclusive expeditions, journeys with a purpose that were life-changing. And those relationships are intact today. Like people still connect to that community, even though we stopped doing those expeditions in 2004.
Wow.
We just had a reunion last summer.
Yeah.
For a lot of the volunteers and expedition leaders. So it worked, and it gave me confidence that purpose-driven and values-driven organizations are possible and are worthwhile. And that they're worth trying, even though they go against the status quo, right? When you go to do business planning as an entrepreneur, there's sort of a nod to values and purpose, and then we get on with the business of action planning and strategy and how are you going to make money?
Right.
All of these things. What if we flip that around? What if we said that the core of the work is the values and purpose?
I love what you said, journeys with a purpose, because in practical terms, you did the journey in the wilderness, but we all are in a journey, and, having a journey with a purpose is the whole reason for being, really. I mean, and if you translate that into organizations, I think they would be so much more effective, right?
I agree. And that is really the premise of the work that we're doing at Women's Leadership Intensive is to help women connect with that core of purpose, values, vision. And to me, the purpose and the values piece comes first and then the vision so that they can lead from that place, whether they're doing that as an entrepreneur, creating an organization, or whether they want to become that leader within an organization. Those rare leaders that we've had in our careers who really embody those things and actually act accordingly, make decisions accordingly, as opposed to just following through with the status quo of what's expected.
Right. So you directly applied your experience with the outdoor expeditions to developing this program. And I think that's phenomenal. And I was reading in your mission for your leadership intensive course, there's 3 components: purpose, power, and presence. And I was immediately like, wow, that sounds like power, purpose, play,
Yeah.
And those are so powerful words. Maybe you could just kind of talk about those tenets and why why are they so important to you and what this means to you in your work. Hi, my friend. Kavita here. Do you often feel blocked from moving forward? We all feel that way at times. These are referred to as energy blocks. I've created a short, actionable PDF guide to help you release your negative energy blocks. Click the link in the description to download it now for free. Now, let's get back to the episode.
First of all, I just want to mention this gap between the purpose work I did with Paddle to a Cure and the purpose work I'm doing with Women's Leadership Intensive, because I don't want to give the impression that we live our lives always in this place of being clear about our purpose.
Right.
So there's a big gap in there in between those two things for me.
For sure.
And I just want to acknowledge that those gaps are part of life, right? The gaps where your world gets small because you're looking after young kids, or your world gets small because you're just trying to pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
And those are realities that most of us live in. And the cycle of coming back to a place of purpose is a journey in itself, and it is a cycle. And if for those of us who go through times where we don't feel connected to purpose, that's part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an easy part of the process because we feel lost.
Yes.
But it's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just didn't want to give the impression that I lived this magical unicorn life of always feeling and working in a place of purpose, because that's not how it went.
Oh, yeah. I hear you.
All right. In terms of purpose, power, and presence, purpose, leadership is primarily an inside job. And again, that's a different perspective that we take at Women's Leadership Intensive than your traditional leadership development, which is teaching you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Our programs really connect you to who are you, and from that place, how can you lead in an aligned way? So if we start with a place of values and purpose, and then we use that as a way to make all the other decisions, then we get to this place where our actions are aligned.
Mm-hmm.
Even the act of sort of starting out here with strategy, which is where a lot of people start, can take us to all the things we think we should do and the things we should be. And it's not to say that we might get to some of those same conclusions, but it's coming at it from a very different place. It's starting from that core.
Mm-hmm. I so agree with you, because I know like when I introduced you, one of your things was we have to, women are so able to change the world, I would say, right? But I believe, and I don't know if you agree with me, that in order to change the world, we have to change ourselves first and perceptions of ourselves. And it comes from within. And I think that's kind of what you were referring to, is it's an inside job. So you have to first align with your values and what your inner purpose is before you can go out into the world and lead effectively.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think, early waves of women coming into leadership, we had to act like men to survive. Right? Because that's the only standard there was. This is how it is to be a leader. And if you're not this, then you're not included.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're coming into an era. I hope we're coming into an era where now women can have a little bit more space to lead as themselves, which is really what's needed to get the benefits of diversity, right? There's no point in women coming in and leading like men, because then we're just going to get to the same outcomes we're getting to now.
Right.
That's not the point. The point is for us to be able to come in, and this is women and other underrepresented groups, right? For us to come in as ourselves means that we bring in those diverse perspectives, we change things, right? Which is disruptive, but necessary.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that, in that, do you believe that the traditional organization structures, the traditional structures are quite limiting, but do you feel that that's changing? And I think you just mentioned that you believe it is, and hopefully it is, because I think as a society, perhaps society is realizing that women have so much more to offer, not just women, but like you said, different groups. And so you think it is changing?
Yes.
Slowly, but
not nearly fast enough. And there's a reason for that. And the idea, we're more comfortable, I think. Disruption's hard, right? Change is hard. We talk about it, sounds good. Then when we get into it, we resist. So the idea that this will organically change over time, and the patriarchy will organically dissolve, or racism will organically dissolve. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's true, but it is going to take generations to get there organically. Mm-hmm. So what needs to happen, in my opinion, to accelerate this and to start to reap the benefits of it sooner is that we need to make structural changes and systemic changes. Mm-hmm. And frankly, there are not a lot of organizations or societies that are doing that. But where it happens, we do see accelerated change. And we do see the benefits of that. Right. All the research is irrefutable in pointing to how much diverse leadership teams lead to better outcomes on every metric, right? Productivity, profitability, ethics, decision-making, innovation, you name it.
Right. So we're talking about organizations, but maybe if I flip to individuals. So for example, people who are listening today, they're contemplating change in their life and in our case, midlife, right? And like you and I have made some changes in our lives and the issue is, like you said, change is hard, right? And they're very hesitant. They're afraid because, they don't want to go outside of their comfort zone. They've been doing whatever they've been doing for so many years and they don't have the confidence to change, right? So being a change maker or, somebody who's worked with women, especially, what would you advise women in terms of, if you're afraid to take the next steps, what should you do? Like, what steps should you take to make even a little change, even the small changes to find your purpose?
I think there's two things. The first one is this sort of ties in our second pillar of power, which is, our world is very much set up around, we get this sense of power or security from things like status and achievement.
Right.
And if we're asking ourselves, if there's a call inside of us, even a whisper inside of us that says, there's more here for me, that's making a shift over to that place of purpose. Why am I here? What does it mean? What does my work mean? What does my life mean? That shift is a very worthwhile shift to make, but it's not necessarily an easy road. And I think that's one thing I would say is to just recognize you're going down a path that is fulfilling and life affirming and joyful, and at the same time, challenging and disruptive and difficult at times, right? And lonely at times.
Yep.
And so it's just knowing that both of those can be true at the same time. And just when the darkness shows up, to just be ready for it and to know that it's not a sign that you should stop and turn back. It's just part of the path.
And listening to that inner, that you said, that inner voice or that twinge in your heart that tells you, okay, it's there for a reason. It's a sign, right?
Exactly. It's your deeper self calling to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is your one life.
Yeah.
That's the thing about midlife is that we recognize that now, right? The runway is not infinite.
Right.
If we're lucky, we're halfway there.
Yeah. And I think, like you said before, we've always looked after other people, really, with ourselves last. So it's time now really to figure out what we want and go for it. But along those lines, and you said it is, and from my experience, and I'm sure yours, it's not easy because you not only have, you want to do things, you understand what you may understand the goal, but then there's always these obstacles that are, whether they're your inside voice saying, oh my God, I can't do it, I'm not good enough, I don't know how to do this, or outside criticism saying that, why are you making a change, or are you crazy because everything is good? And,
Exactly.
So, maybe you could talk about some of these obstacles that you might have faced and how does one go about overcoming those?
Yeah, well, I think this is where the kind of work that you're doing fits in, as well as the kind of work that I'm doing, which is, let's not do this alone, because that makes it way harder.
Right.
And so creating affinity space, like what you're doing with this podcast and your work, and what I do with women's leadership intensive programs, it's a space where women can come and be real about this stuff with other women who are asking themselves the same question and wondering about the same calling or whispering that's going on inside them. It is much easier to do that and be on that journey when you are on a parallel journey with other women who are also doing it. So that's for sure. And I think it's just, expecting those obstacles. For me, a lot of them are internal, right? I grew up in the same patriarchal culture that everyone else did, right? So the internalized patriarchy is in me too, in terms of, who do I think I am? The imposter syndrome piece. should I just quietly live my life and not rattle the cage,
not rock the boat? Yeah.
Exactly. And that sort of, that voice is in there, but the other voice that's in there is, if not now, then when?
Mm-hmm.
And if not who, if not you, then who?
Then who? Yeah.
And the reality
That's
is
great.
we as women look at the world and we see that things need to change. We feel it, we've experienced it, and we see it clearly out there. And if not us, then who?
Yeah.
Individually and collectively.
Yeah. And that's exactly why, like you said, I'm bringing people like you on here because, not only can we learn from you, but we can see that you're an example of what you can do. I mean, it's not easy. Even like what I did was not easy. I left a corporate job of over 25 years, was very comfortable. And I just left it, with that little twinge in my heart. But that was like 2 years before I actually left it. So it took me a while because I had all those inner and outer objections that I was facing. But eventually they become so strong that you can't ignore them. And I guess the message is you shouldn't ignore them, right?
Don't ignore them, and figure out who else can you spend time with who doesn't think you're crazy. Mm-hmm. Right? Because, there are these, again, these sort of spaces where we as women who are asking these questions or hearing that whisper, that call, can come together and just hearing about how other people are doing that same thing gives us courage and helps us stay the course in the face of some of those obstacles. We need
Absolutely. That. Yeah, it's community, right? It's so important to have that community and the ability to speak your mind and to share your stories. And so that's exactly what we're doing here. So I was just reading actually one of your recent blogs, and I thought it was really interesting. It was called Permission to Find Your Way. And I encourage everyone to read that. And it's I'll just read what you had mentioned, that there's a tension between feeling like we always need to be productive and yet long for more time to reflect and dream. So I personally believe that, like we talked about earlier, and the first step in really trying to figure out your true purpose is really inner reflection and self-care, but we don't often allow this for ourselves. So, what are your thoughts around, writing that article, and how would you advise listeners to really, I guess, find their way?
Yeah, I think this is something that I've noticed over the last few years too, is that when the world I live in is leadership development. And I research, what's out there in terms of other thought leaders in that space and so on. And I see so many men, like, it's predominantly men who occupy this space. There's a few gems in there, Brene Brown and others, but it's primarily occupied by men. And what I recognized is the ability to occupy some of that thought leadership space means that you've given yourself time to reflect. You've given yourself time to collect your thoughts or write that book or start to put your ideas together. And if we as women are constantly busy being productive, and this includes our work, but also our home life and all of the social and emotional and domestic labor that goes on that keeps us busy, then when do we get an opportunity to put our thoughts together or write that blog or really consider, who do I want to be as a leader, as opposed to just being productive and churning stuff out? So I think as women, our sense of worth has been tied up in what we contribute, whether it's to our job or to our household or our family. And a lot of that is in what we do for other people, for the company, for the family, for the household. And that's a never-ending treadmill. Right. Unless we choose to step off of it and pull back and do some of that reflection and drifting and dreaming and being unproductive, because that is the place of creativity. Right? If we're just on that productivity treadmill and just doing stuff, I'm ticking off my list all day long. There is no room there for creativity.
But our society is so programmed for that, especially North American society is so programmed to do that. And sometimes when you go on, if you go on vacation, let's say you go to Italy or you go to Europe and you see people really taking the time to just enjoy life, and I think that probably in the last year, that's happened more because we've had more time, to spend with our families and to really contemplate. So I'm hoping that kind of vision or that way to lead life remains.
I hope so too.
Because it's so important. We have more time, and let's use it not only to be productive, but to be rather than always do, right? So
that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the other things I've been asking my friends and people in the community is that, do we actually take time as women, especially, to really celebrate our successes? We've done so much in our lives, and oftentimes, would you be able to write 50 things that you've done well, or 50 the things that you're proud of? It's important to do that. And I wanted to get your opinion on that, and also maybe ask you what you're most proud of.
I so agree with that. I think, again, that's part of, focusing on process versus outcomes, right? Can we build in a process by which we acknowledge those things, right? Those accomplishments, the things that we're proud of, because those are also the things that help us stay motivated to keep going. For me, there's a couple things. I'm really proud of my ability to create community and a space where women can come and really be themselves and ask the hard questions. And my job is to be with on that journey. And I embrace that. And I love it. The other is that, the older I get, the more I'm throwing out the book in terms of how to be an entrepreneur and how to be a leader and how to be a business owner. And so, early days in my business, I would worry about, I can't, make this arrangement with somebody that's individual because I need to hold the line on what my business systems are, my business rates or whatever. And now I've thrown that out and I think I can do this business exactly as I want to. And if there is an alternative way of working with somebody that works for them and it works for me, I can do it. I don't have to follow the playbook. And it's more interesting to me and more fun to not.
So you're kind of listening to being open to whatever kind of comes up and seeing how it fits and how you feel about that, and not worrying so much as, is this the proper thing according to my business strategy, or is that what you mean? Or
and really those rules were not made for me.
Right.
They weren't built for me. So I don't have to follow them. We can build new rules.
That's right. And we can celebrate the successes along the way, right?
Yes.
That's amazing.
And redefining success too, right?
Yeah.
That again, the definition of success may not have been built for you. Build your own.
So my listeners here that, listening to you and talking about all these things that we are talking about, what would you, what kind of message would you, I guess end off with is as they're contemplating a reinvention in their life? Like, reinvention to me is not necessarily giving up everything that you are. It's actually discovering who you've always been and what's always been inside of you, and really bringing that out into the world. And I guess maybe some last thoughts about how to do that, or what you would say to the listeners.
I would say this is our one and beautiful life. And that voice inside that's asking us to look a little deeper, or to ask a few questions about how we're living that beautiful life, and the longing that we have for greater meaning, purpose, alignment, sense of self. That voice is worth listening to. And each of us who can connect to that and start to live more fully into that does make a difference. It makes a difference to our own lives and the way we're experiencing those lives. It makes a difference to our close circle, right? The people that are around us, our families, our friends, our communities. But I believe it also makes a collective difference. It starts to shift our world in a more human place. And we need that, right? Some of the trends of our world have been way out of balance. And I think women are one of the forces that will start to bring more balance that is better for everyone back into the world. But, each of us connecting to that voice inside it matters.
So well said. So well said. And I think from what you're doing and what I'm doing and bringing that out and letting people hear it so that they can give back to, I think giving back and talking more about these issues is so important, because what else are we going to do? I mean, we have to, in order to move forward as a community, as a collective, we have to not only celebrate our successes, but celebrate each other's, So
exactly. And don't get caught up in the idea that you have to do something huge.
Right.
Impacts can be subtle.
Yes.
But important.
Right. I think a lot of people think, oh, well, does that mean that I have to, leave my job and start a new business? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It could be as simple as like, I'm not feeling good about myself, so let me just go for a walk, or just little things that you can improve who you are in so many different ways. And it doesn't have to be big. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I don't want people coming out with thinking that they have to do this huge thing, all the time.
Exactly. And that can stop us, right? Thinking like it has to be this big change, or we have to have this big impact and save the world somehow. And, we know from our interactions with people who are more values and purpose-based that even those small 5-minute interactions can have a positive impact. That's the kind of impact that I'm interested in.
Yes. Yes. That's wonderful. Wow. A lot that we've gone through. Thank you so much. I wanted to, if you could let us know, what we talked a little bit about your program, but perhaps you can let us know where to find you and what are some of the great things that you're doing and how people can learn more about you.
Yeah, you can find us at womensleadershipintensive.ca, and all of our programs are listed there. Our core program is a year-long women's leadership development program that is built by women for women. All of our facilitators and coaches are women. It's an amazing community that comes together and stays together for the whole year. So that's our core program. We start that in February of every year.
Okay.
So we're just looking towards our 2021 cohort now. Very exciting.
Now, Belinda, sorry to interrupt, but is it kind of, do you have recurring people coming in to the program? Yes. Or is it, okay. So does it build up on each year? Or is it, participants?
No, once people have completed the 1-year intensive program, we have an alumni community stream where people then can move into that. And then they continue their connection with the community through workshops and coaching. Mm-hmm. But it's just a little bit of a different structure for alumni.
Okay.
And then we also have a 6-week online program, which is sort of a jumpstart program to get women thinking about themselves as leaders and what does that look like. So if we were to say, leading as yourself, how would you know what that is? And so we put some structure and some context around that in the 6-week program. So we run that every year in the spring and in the fall.
Fantastic. Is this meant for women in the corporate world? Is it for entrepreneurs? Is it for anybody, or is it specifically for women who are leading in organizations?
We have sort of 3 groups that come together and form our mix. One is leaders within for-profit corporations. Mm-hmm. The other is leaders in the nonprofit sector. Mm-hmm. And then the third are women entrepreneurs.
Perfect.
And that diversity actually creates a really nice mix in terms of the group, because people bringing in different perspectives from different sectors is really sort of a magical combination.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. So womeninleadershipintensive.ca?
Women's Leadership Intensive.ca. I know it's a mouthful.
No.
WLI was not available, and I would have gone there to simplify it for everyone, but so we're stuck with Women's Leadership.
Oh, no. Well, that's perfect. That's perfect. Yes, I would encourage everyone who's interested in learning more about what Belinda and her organization does to please go and check her out and her program. It sounds like an amazing one, especially the year-long one. And, just really appreciate your insights. And, these are hard questions, and the other thing I probably would want to say is that don't take life too seriously either, enjoy it. Like, pretend you're on like an expedition, like, you led the ladies on earlier.
Absolutely.
And just enjoy life. And that's what it's all about. So I appreciate your time and thank you so much. Maybe we'll have a follow-up discussion sometime.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Belinda. Her thoughts on women and leadership are so powerful and relevant and can be applied both personally and within our organizations. Here are her key takeaways. Number 1, if we start with a place of values and purpose, and then we can use that as a way to make all the other decisions, then we get to a place where our actions are aligned. Number 2, if there is a call inside of us, even a whisper inside of us that says, there's more here for me, that's making a shift over to that place of purpose. Number 3, when the darkness shows up, be ready for it and know that it's not a sign that you should stop and turn back. It's just part of the path. Number 4, it's your one life. The thing about midlife is we recognize now that the runway is not infinite. If we're lucky, we're halfway there. Number 5, let's not do this alone, because it just makes it so much harder. Let's create affinity spaces where we can come together and ask similar questions or wonder about the same callings. Number 6, if not now, then when? And if not you, then who? Number 7, if we're just on that productivity treadmill and just doing stuff, ticking off our lists, there's no room for creativity. Number 8, redefine your definition of success. The definition may not have been built for you. Build your own. Number 9, this is our one and beautiful life. Listen to it and connect with that voice inside. It can start to shift our world collectively. It matters. And number 10, don't get caught up with the idea that you have to do something huge. Impacts can be subtle, but important. Thank you so much for taking your time out to listen. I hope this podcast inspires you to listen to that twinge in your heart and take action. If you enjoyed this, I'd be honored if you would share, rate, and review this podcast. It helps us bring this important message out to more people. Collectively, we can make change happen. Join our free community at powerpurposeplay.ca or reach out to me directly at Kavita@powerpurposeplay.ca. I'd love to hear your comments or suggestions. Thanks so much, and I'm looking forward to being here again next week.